seeing that their villages, their estates were went denuded of money by the central authorities, because if the money went out of the village, it didn't come to him. So.
Right. Any questions? Any comments? Anyone wants to make? Yeah, Margaret.
Just wondered, what was the level of peasant education like in those times? How much did they know about current affairs? Did they know why France was going to war with Spain? And were they fundamentally royalists in the same way, like they believed in the monarch, but it was just the middlemen who were mismanaging it?
I'd have thought the level of general and formal education would have been fairly low. There would have been the occasional peasant, particularly the well-to-do peasants, would have been able to read and write. There are the archives are full of legal cases brought by villagers against the next village, reaffirming the boundaries and who could do what with a common land. So they weren't, peasants weren't completely dumb and stupid. I had intended to originally to bring some slides to show how how peasants in this period were depicted by outsiders, usually artists engaged in selling their work to the emerging middle class. But yes, some would have been able to read, but very many could hardly sign their names. Both marriage documents are quite often signed by just a mark. So the general formal education level, pretty low, but it didn't mean it was stupid.
Anyone else?
Another thought, that the other thing about early modern Europe is the high level of oral tradition. Oral tradition is much more important at this time, rather than say today, where you could go on the internet, or before the internet you could sort of log down to the local library and get a book out. They were sufficiently au fait to be able to organise, to resist. They'd have had various experiences. I would say recruits would come back with return to the village with military experience. So just different. They probably thought and felt differently, but to actually get into the mind of the peasant in early modern Europe is extremely difficult, because they didn't leave any written records. You've got to sort of filter through official records. The average peasant would only appear on the official record when he was born, when he got married, and when he died. The other major time is when he had to go to law. He was either prosecuted for rioting or whatever. But yeah, they managed to regulate themselves, because there weren't any outside policemen, for example. Everybody, social control was a face-to-face thing. You didn't have you can call a local copper in if you felt bad about the guy next door beating his wife, you'd get together and stand outside and boo and hiss and belittle him and go through various rituals to get the guy to mend his ways.
Adam and then Simon.
You mentioned in answer to a previous question, the peasant war in Germany, which I think was going on about the same time, wasn't it?
No, the Peasants' War was at 1525. The period of the Provenance was well, but there were two outbreaks. One
And that makes it even better. Because in that peasant revolt in Germany, communistic ideas came up, and they'd take over towns, abolish private property, abolish money, abolish marriage and all that. And that doesn't seem to have occurred in this peasant revolt in France. Were there any communistic ideas that emerged in France at this time?
No.
Oh.
No.
Why not talk about the peasant revolt in Germany? Nor in revolts in Spain, Italy, England. Oh yes, sorry, there were in England. There was in England the levelers and the diggers. But, no, not in the reading I've done. Nothing of that nature. I mean, there were sort of all kinds of millenarian movements. You know, the kingdom of God is about to happen, and so we abolish property. But they tended to be sporadic, as far as I know, and not. In the main, peasants wanted things to be as they thought they were in their father's day. You know, things were better in the past, which is perfectly true. You know, following the Black Death, wage levels, consumption levels went up to an all-time high, a level that wasn't to be achieved until the latter half of the 18th century. So, you know, in that way, the past was much better than the present, and you know it makes sense to try and restore that kind of society. But ideas of having a complete change of going forward would have been largely meaningless.
Simon?
Yeah, sort of following on from that, I suppose. You mentioned at the start of your talk that wage levels between 1450 and 1650 had declined, fourfold, so that a German peasant was working 4 times as long for the same goods in 1650 as 1450. How much of this was, do you think, was due to population increase, and how much after the Black Death and the subsequent recovery, and how much was increasing capitalist penetration of the villages, like taking money taxes, being able to more effectively tax villages?
Well, I wouldn't characterise the king coming around for taxes to pay for the army as capitalist penetration. Personally, it's using capitalism as a stick to beat the past with. I don't think that was what was happening. Capitalist penetration to me is more likely to start off at the village level with the slightly better off peasants accumulating land, gambling on the grey market, being able to, particularly those that live closer to large towns, to specialise in things like vine growing,